It was the morning of December 1st, 1948. Somerton Beach on the outskirts of Adelaide, Australia, was catching the first light of the southern summer. The sea was calm. A few early visitors had already settled on the sand when, around 7 in the morning, a couple out for a horseback ride spotted a figure slumped against the seawall separating the beach from the road. The man was lying on his back, legs stretched out, feet pointing toward the water. His body was stiff. He was not breathing. At first, some people thought he was asleep. Someone mentioned having seen that same figure in that same spot the night before, completely still. When police arrived, what they found was not simply an unidentified body. It was the beginning of one of the most thoroughly documented unsolved cases of the 20th century. The man was solidly built. He stood roughly 6 feet tall. Forensic examiners placed his age between 40 and 45. He was well-nourished and in good physical condition. His feet drew attention early on. They had an unusually high arch, and his toes showed a distinctive curl associated with a type of footwear uncommon at the time. The muscles in his calves were exceptionally developed. This was not a man who lived a sedentary life. His clothing was strikingly formal for a beach setting: a dark brown suit, a white dress shirt, a knitted tie, polished shoes. For a summer morning on an Australian beach, the outfit was out of place. There were no visible signs of violence, no wounds, no bruises. What investigators did find was evidence that the man had vomited before he died. The forensic analysis showed that his heart and stomach bore signs consistent with poisoning, but no identifiable toxic substance was detected using the methods available at the time. That was the first of many contradictions. He carried no documents. There was no paper with his name anywhere on him. What he did have was a pack of cigarettes containing butts from a different brand, a box of matches, chewing gum, 2 transit tickets, and a luggage claim ticket from Adelaide railway station. That ticket led investigators to a suitcase. Inside was clothing, and every item of clothing, including what the man had been wearing, had its labels removed. Every single one. The manufacturer, the dry cleaner, the size, all of it had been methodically stripped away. The systematic removal of anything that might lead to an identification was not an oversight. It was a deliberate choice. Authorities published a description of the man in newspapers across the country. Missing persons records were reviewed. Fingerprints were compared. Consulates from multiple countries were contacted. No one claimed the man. No one recognized him. The body was embalmed. Casts were made of his face and hands. Photographs were circulated. The man remained nameless. Then came the piece of paper. During a more thorough examination of his clothing, investigators discovered in a nearly hidden pocket of his trousers a small rolled slip of paper. It was a tiny fragment, as if torn from a page. Printed on it in small type were 2 words: Tamám Shud. The phrase is Persian. It means finished or it is ended. It is the closing line of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, an 11th century collection of poetry that circulated widely in pocket editions throughout the 20th century. The fragment had been torn from the final page of a physical copy of the book. Investigators needed to find that copy. Months later, a man came forward voluntarily. He said that weeks before the body was discovered, someone had tossed a book from the window of a car parked outside his home in Glenelg, a coastal suburb of Adelaide. He had picked it up without thinking much of it. When he read the reports about the case, he handed it in. It was a copy of the Rubaiyat. The last page was missing a small fragment, exactly the size and shape of the slip found in the dead man's pocket. It was the same book. On the inside back cover, nearly invisible under ordinary light, there was something else. Using ultraviolet light, investigators found 5 lines of uppercase letters that did not form any recognizable word in any identifiable European language. A code, apparently. The second line had been crossed out. At the bottom, there was also a phone number. That number led to a woman, a nurse who lived in Glenelg, just a short distance from where the book had been found. She was interviewed. She acknowledged having owned a copy of the Rubaiyat and acknowledged having given it to someone. But the identity of that person and the nature of her connection to him was never fully explained. The woman asked that her name not be made public. For decades, she was known only as Jestin. What came to light many years later was that this woman had a young son at the time of the events, and that son, as he grew up, displayed notable physical characteristics, the same unusual foot shape and the same calf muscle development that had been documented in the man from Somerton Beach. The possibility that the dead man may have been the boy's biological father was put forward by Professor Derek Abbott of the University of Adelaide, who worked actively on the case from the early 2000s onward. The historical context fed another line of inquiry. The year 1948, the opening of the Cold War, the meticulous removal of all identifying information, the encrypted code, the coastal location near military naval installations, all of it pointed toward the possibility that the man from Somerton had been a spy. There is no direct evidence to confirm this. Declassified intelligence files contain no verifiable reference to the case. But the theory has not been dismissed because it has never been disproven either. The code in the book was never deciphered. The most skilled cryptographers given access to those 5 lines found no verifiable solution. Some argue it may have been a one-time pad cipher, decipherable only with a key that existed solely in the hands of whoever was meant to receive it. In 2019, authorities authorized the exhumation of the body to extract DNA samples. A complete genetic profile was obtained. That profile was entered into genealogical databases and pointed to possible family lines of Scandinavian origin, likely Finnish or Estonian. But no definitive identification was reached. What is known for certain is this. On December 1st, 1948, a man died on an Australian beach. Someone had removed every label from his clothing. He carried in his pocket a fragment of a Persian book bearing the word "finished." That book, containing a coded message on its back cover, was found near where he died. A woman who had owned that book knew him or had known him, and her connection to him was never fully explained, and no one in more than 70 years has been able to say with certainty who that man was. The city of Adelaide placed a marker at West Terrace Cemetery where he was buried. It reads simply, "Unknown man." Fresh flowers appear on the grave with some regularity. No one has ever publicly claimed to be the one leaving them. The case remains open, not in any formal legal sense, but in the most literal one. There is no answer that closes it. There is an undeciphered code, a book, a slip of paper, and a DNA profile waiting for a match in a database somewhere. And there is a nameless man in an Australian cemetery whose identity, if it was ever known to anyone, was never passed on. Tamám Shud. It is ended, but not entirely.